first. Good afternoon, and nice to see you again. So before we listen to, actually I would like to give rise to supreme motivation of a bodhisattva. So this means that for the benefit of all sentient beings, I wanted to listen to and reflect and meditate on teachings of genuine Dharma. As a Mahayana practitioner, it is always important to apply the three excellencies that all the masters always talk. The first one is the motivation. Either you do meditation or listening to teaching or chanting. It is always important to think that I'm going to do such a practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. That actually makes the whole practice, whole teaching more vast, and also it becomes genuine Mahayana practice. It's not just rather participating for a lecture or learn something from the school, because the teaching that we are discussing here is it's a very kind of advanced Mahayana practice by Lord Gampopa, as I mentioned last time. So it is always important to think about all sentient beings, wishing for them to free from suffering and achieve happiness. So the jewel ornament of liberation is our subject. This is third time and third day that we are discussing on this. So the last two sections, what we have done is we have finished actually first three chapters, and we have tried to emphasize and remind on these important topics beginning of every section and every teaching. For example, the Buddha nature was the first chapter. It's always remember and understand that we have the Buddha nature, so therefore we have hope to achieve enlightenment, and we have nature of or potential to be great practitioner, potential to be bodhisattva or arhat. Even we have a potential to be better person, happier person. So if you have that fundamental understanding in your mind, then you would it helps you to have more interest and more enthusiasm. Otherwise, you're trying to do something that you have no idea whether this will happen or not, you know. So that's why the Buddha nature, understanding of the having Buddha nature is very important. It is like the seed. So the second chapter is like a precious human life that we have discussed. We all have this precious human life, which is the ground or foundation of all the practice. You know, in order to achieve enlightenment, and we have to practice so many methods, you know, because we have to abandon or remove our negativities. So these negativities has the antidote that Buddha taught us. In order to apply this antidote, in order to practice this, and we have to have a proper ground, which is human, precious human life, which literally means that human life that can understand, having communication, you know, means without any problem for any of our senses, hearing, listening, understanding, and feeling, all those. So that's important, the second thing. And then third one is the teacher, you know, the master. Even though the Lord Buddha has taught teaching 2,500 years ago, if we don't have any master that who can introduce, who can teach us, we won't be able to, you know, to practice. So therefore, the teacher, the master is important. And then the third one is actually the teaching itself, teaching that masters teach. So in these teaching include 84,000 teachings that I was mentioning last time. Buddha taught 84,000 teachings because sentient beings have so many different type of emotions, negative emotions. So that falls into three main categories of negative emotions, which is anger and hatred is one thing, and then ignorance, and attachment or desire. So every negative emotions falls into these three, we call it three poisons. So in order to eliminate these three poisons, Buddha taught three type of teachings: Vinaya, Abhidharma, and Sutra. So those teachings have 84,000 different aspects, because we have 84,000 different aspects of negative emotions. So within this, the teaching, it has also many different levels. That some of them we have discussed last time. The whole purpose of this teaching is an antidote to 4 different problems. So the first one is attached to this life, and the second one is attached to samsara, and third one is attached to self, and then the fourth one is not knowing how to practice genuine dharma. So we have those 4 major problems. So this is you know, very common in Tibetan Buddhism. As I say, in the Gelug tradition, in the Lamrim Chemo, it indicate in the same way, and also in Satya tradition, there's the parting from 4 attachment. I'm sure you have heard that. It's very one of the most important teachings in Satya lineage. Satya Kunga Nyingpo received this actually direct from Manjushri. You know, Manjushri gave him 4 sentences. It says, if you're attached to this present life, you're not practitioner. If you're attached to the samsaric pleasure, not renunciation. If you attach to yourself, it's not a compassion. If you attach to existence, it's not a view. So, in same way, we have this one and Gampopa layout in similar way, and then he categorized these every teachings into four, which is the antidote to the four things. So the first one is impermanent, is the antidote to attach to this present life, and then the fold of samsara and karmic cause and effect was the antidote to attach to this pleasure, samsaric pleasure. And then a third one, actually we are here right now, the fourth, the main chapter is compassion and loving kindness. So the compassion and the loving kindness is the antidote to self. So the compassion and loving kindness is taught in Buddhism and everywhere, especially in Mahayana, Vajrayana tradition. This is actually the key teaching, by all the teachings and all the masters. They always talk about compassion and loving kindness, which is, the main practice of Mahayana Buddhism is a compassion and loving kindness. So here, even though we have all those precious human life, Buddha nature and everything, if we don't have a compassion and a loving kindness, so then our aim become very sort of selfish, very narrow. We're not thinking about other sentient beings. We are only thinking about ourselves, to achieve happiness for ourselves, to have a better life for the next life, and to achieve enlightenment into bodhisattva, whatever you want. But without compassion and loving kindness, it is impossible to achieve all this, because everything is interdependent. In Buddhist teachings, it's very commonly taught interdependent, and we as a Buddhist do not believe that we have a creator God who is the creator of everything, and whatever you have is God made it. You cannot do anything, whether you like or not. Just we have to accept it. But in Buddhism, we don't have that. Everything that exists here, going to happen and has happened in the past, everything comes from its own cause and condition. So therefore, if you're only thinking about yourself, you is one person. I, it's only one person. If you think about only one person, you are actually creating cause and conditions for your achievement. It's very limited. But instead of thinking about only ourselves, if we expand that to all sentient beings, then our cause and the conditions expanding. The more we can expand, the result will be bigger. So on the other hand, in the universe, there are so many different lives and so many sentient beings lived. But doesn't matter whether you are a human being or animal or hungry ghost, or you speak different language, different background, different culture, come from different country. Every single sentient being want one thing and don't want one thing. That is very universal. So what is that all the sentient beings want is happiness. What is that they don't want is suffering. Who wants suffering? Nobody wants to have a suffering. And everybody wants to have a happiness. And then, but does everybody in this world, even if you look in a human society, does everybody is full of happiness and free from suffering? No. Why? They want it, but they don't have it. They don't want the suffering, but they have it. Why? It's because not everybody know what is the cause and conditions for suffering that we need to avoid, and what is the cause and conditions for happiness that we have to apply, So that because of that ignorance, the sentient beings are facing into different situation. So now we are learning from the Buddha's teaching and all these different methods what is the cause for those suffering that we need to abandon, we need to avoid, and what is the cause and conditions for the happiness that we need to accept, we need to develop. So then we know that everybody is in the same situation, So therefore, we in compassion and loving kindness, we wishing everybody to have a happiness and everybody free from suffering. So here, if you look in the teaching, this chapter is loving kindness and compassion. Actually, loving kindness and compassion are very similar, but in terms of practice, the loving kindness comes first, and then compassion. So loving kindness is, we do prayer. We have a for immeasurable thought prayer. It says, may all sentient beings free from suffering and cause of suffering, and may all beings have happiness and cause of happiness. So when we say may all sentient beings have happiness and cause of happiness, that is the loving kindness. So when we say may all sentient beings free from suffering and cause of suffering, that is the compassion. They are similar but slightly different. So now we talk about the loving kindness. Loving kindness actually have 3 different categories. The first one is called loving kindness to sentient beings. And then second one is called with a reference to the reality, and then third one is without reference. So which means that when we do our loving kindness practice, when you see somebody need happiness and you're just merely wishing for that person to have happiness, so that is the first one. In that aspect, we have no understanding of what is the reality of all sentient beings and all existent. Basically just the ordinary loving kindness is the first one. And then second one is when you extend your loving kindness and you have some understanding behind that whoever have no happiness is because it's unfortunate. Every single sentient being have the potential to have happiness, and everybody have equally to have happiness and cause of happiness. But unfortunately, because of not understanding the reality of a phenomena, they're facing into those kind of suffering. So that is the second one. And then third one is without reference, meaning that you understanding every existence as emptiness. From the perspective of ultimate reality, there's nothing exists. Everything is interdependent. So nothing is inherently exist, right? So those three different levels of loving kindness, it's actually not depend on the object, not depend on the sentient beings, but it's depend on the practitioners, based on practitioners' understanding and based on practitioners' realization. When you don't have understanding of the reality of existence, we have a merely just compassion and loving kindness. When you see somebody have a problem and you say, you wish for them to free from the suffering, but we don't have a further understanding, the basic understanding of why they are facing into that kind of suffering and what cause and what conditions they should apply to free from those. It's another level. And then if you have understanding of emptiness and interdependent, then it becomes much more deeper. You understand? So loving kindness and compassion, it's always very, very important as a Mahayana practice, Vajrayana and Mahayana practice. And every practice that we do, it's begin with the bodhicitta, generating bodhicitta, which involve compassion and the loving kindness. So as I mentioned earlier, when we do these practices, it's always important to understand that everyone have the potential to have happiness, and nobody has to, face into suffering. But unfortunately, out of their ignorance, out of their negative emotions, they are suffering in samsara. So therefore, we wanted to free them from suffering. We wanted them to achieve happiness. That is the fundamental of a bodhicitta. This is foundation of a bodhicitta. So the way we practice, there are different methods. Like in Buddhism, we usually, when we practice compassion, we use some examples. We use in Tibetan tradition, not only Tibetan tradition, Buddhism, we use a mother. We say mother sentient beings. Because if you just think that may all sentient beings have happiness and cause of happiness, sometimes it is not easy. We as an ordinary sentient being, not everybody is our friend, not everybody is our family. There are so many people who we don't like, there are so many people who they don't like us, So it's hard to include everybody in your compassion and loving kindness, So that's why we have to train that, we have to develop that. Sometimes you can start with yourself, who you are, and what you want. You want happiness and you don't want suffering, right? And then you wish for you to have happiness and you wish for you to free from suffering. You meditate, you practice over and over and over again. And then you can slowly expand that to, we use mother. Why mother is so important? And here in teaching says, the mother has been so important for our life. So firstly, mother give our life. And, our mother carried us in her womb for 9 months. And then after we born, it gave us milk, gave us food, and then taught us how to be, a person and everything. Because when we were born, we didn't come with our suitcase, we were not with all these ties and stuff. Hello everybody, it's not like that, We're just a piece of a little thing. Because of your, mother's hard work, you're like this now. So it's easier to think that way. If you're somebody who really hate your mom, and then you can think of somebody else, somebody who really important to you, who really look after you. So if you have that person, and then it's easier to generate compassion to that person. And then you can expand slowly this to your, people who you like, people with your relatives, your community, and slowly expand. But then when it comes to your enemies, sometimes it's difficult, But then again, even enemy who has done lots of bad things for you, is because out of their ignorance, they try also to be happy, try to be free from suffering. Because of the ignorance, they do not know what is the right thing to do, make them happy. So they didn't know what is the main cause that they need to avoid, So we can also extend our loving kindness to those. And then slowly to everybody in the whole universe, not only a human being, and everybody, animals, people, life that living in the air, life that living in the water, and underground, and everything, So when the time that you be able to think that way, to practice your loving kindness that way, then it becomes genuine loving kindness. Because we are ordinary sentient beings, and we have hatred, and we have attachment and a desire. Until you are being able to think every living being equally, extend your loving kindness equally, your loving kindness might not be genuine, it could still be attached. Like we have attachment for our loved ones, our friends, family, So sometimes people confuse with the loving kindness and attachment. So this is the loving kindness, and then compassion, it's the same, right? We can exactly practice the same way. What do you think? May all sentient beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May all sentient beings free from suffering and achieve enlightenment. So that should be our motivation. Whether even though there are some people who we don't like it, but doesn't matter, we always should try to expand our compassion and loving kindness as much as possible, Like Minjurambachi have a funny story about somebody practicing compassion, right? And he was practicing. There's one guy, and he had a dog. No, his neighbor had a dog, and then he was practicing. Every time he meditate on compassion, the neighbor's dog come into his room, which he doesn't like. But he didn't know what to do and what to say. And then slowly he hate that dog. So when he meditate, of course when he pray, may all sentient beings have happiness, then suddenly it come, what about that dog? And then he was thinking, oh no, that dog cannot be part of my compassion. And then he was doing, may some beings have happiness and the cause of happiness. So he was doing that. He couldn't include that dog. And then he thought one day he found a solution. He went out and found a piece of rock. He put above his door, when your door open in and out. But here, so open a little bit. So when dog come in, he wanted the stone fall into dog's head, so the dog won't come back anymore. So he was practicing, and dog never show up. He forgot. Suddenly he had to go to bathroom. So he opened the door and the stone fall onto his head. Yeah, so you see, even karma is like that, you know. If you're trying to have some, what do you call it, the negative intention, even like this little things like that can happen, you know. So the compassion and loving kindness, we do think about all sentient beings, but the more compassion and more practice that you do in compassion and loving kindness, it actually makes happier ourselves, you know. If you always grumpy, you know, grumpy looking, whoever you talk to badly, people don't treat you nice, people don't like you. But if you have a compassion, you know, always, you know, glowing to whoever you see, you know, smiling, a nice talk to, and you always get a reaction. Even that little thing tells that karma, you know, if you do something good for others, you will get something good back, you know. When you smile somebody, that person will smile you back. If you hit somebody, that person will hit you back, you know. And when we talk about the karmic cause and effect, previous life, past life, and all those are very subtle and not that easy to understand. But the karma is cause and effect. It's so simple, you know, that every cause and condition have its result that is related, that has the same quality of cause and conditions. So basically, the more meditation, more compassion and loving kindness we do, it makes ourselves happier and happier, you know. So if you, let's say, if you wanted to plan something, if you have a little bit, one seed can grow just a little bit. But if you have, you know, if you have a 1 grain of a rice, can grow just a little bit. But if you have a rice full of these, and then you're planning, it can grow a lot. So when we do our compassion and practice, if we only think about ourselves and certain people, the result will be very limited. So when we think about all sentient beings, our motivation has no limit. You know, it has no limit. All sentient beings, as you know, the sentient being have no limit. There's no number, immeasurable. So when you generate a motivation that has no limit, that will automatically brings the result that has no limit. So then, because you are the one who practicing, you are the one who, you know, cultivating that cause and condition, you will be the one who receive the result. So that is also karma. Turn on? Sure, yes. Yeah. You can turn on one here. There's another one. There's another one down there. You want to turn on that too? It's pretty loud.
Yeah.
So this is basically compassion and loving kindness. So then here, the next one is talking about the refuge. The refuge practice. Basically, after compassion and the loving kindness, it is the generating the bodhicitta. In order to generate the bodhicitta, we have to receive bodhisattva vow, right? So for the ground for the bodhisattva vow, you have to have a refuge vow. So that's why Gampopa talk about the refuge here. So I'm sure we're all familiar with the refuge. because we're taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha all the time, whenever practice we do. So refuge, refuge is like a protection, So we can have many different refuge. You can take a refuge in food, clothes, house, car, friend, when you need something, if something can help you serve what you need, it's a refuge. When you need a house, if somebody gives you accommodation, that is a refuge. When you're hungry, if somebody gives you food, that is a refuge. If you need to go to somewhere where you don't know how to go, if somebody take you there, it's a refuge. So, but then here in Buddhism, the refuge that we are taking is what we need to achieve enlightenment, and we need to free from suffering. So now, what kind of object of refuge we can have? In order to achieve enlightenment, we cannot take a refuge in a buffet restaurant. We can eat as much as possible, but doesn't help to our practice the Dharma. The shelter cannot help. The powerful man cannot help. The wealthy people cannot help. So here we need to have somebody who already been there. If you're looking for a guide, when you go to tourist guide, I cannot be tourist guide because I don't know when the Eaton Center was built and who was the first owner, I don't know anything about the St. Lawrence Market. So I cannot be a tourist guide here in Toronto. If you wanted to have a tourist guide, you need to have somebody who knows, who have been there, who have educated. So here we wanted to achieve enlightenment. So now we need to somebody who has already achieved enlightenment. So therefore we need to have a Buddha. Buddha, Dharma, Sangha are the three objects of a refuge. Because the Buddha is who already achieved enlightenment. So we take refuge in Buddha as the teacher. And then we take a refuge in Dharma is because Buddha achieved enlightenment through the Dharma. And we have to achieve enlightenment through the Dharma that Buddha taught. So we take refuge in Buddha as a teacher, or we take refuge in Dharma as path, and we take refuge in Sangha as our companion, And sometimes if you have a Buddha and Dharma, you may not need Sangha, but that's not the case. If you have to go to somebody, even if you have the road, so you need to have somebody to guide, If you go this way, this is the wrong, you have to make a right and all those. So because we, as I mentioned last time, as ordinary sentient beings, we have so many negative emotions. And those negative afflictive emotions are very smart. They're always with us. Whenever they have a chance, they'll grab and take us into the jungle and eat it, So therefore we always need a Sangha who can guide us, who can tell us step by step, lead our practice. So therefore we need to take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So actually this refuge vow, it's called, sometimes we call it vow, in Tibetan we call it Domba. Also it says if you take refuge in these three jewels, then you consider yourself as a Buddhist, between the border between a Buddhist and non-Buddhist, also whether you have a refuge vow or not. If you have taken refuge vow, then you can consider yourself as Buddhist. But also, if you wanted to take any of these further precepts, the vows, you know, in Buddhism we have it's called seven different vows, like a monk's vows, a nun's vow, and then there's the lay precepts. So all those, if you wanted to take any of those, like for example, when we do a Nyungne practice, when we take this Mahayana Sojong, like from this time onward, you know, until tomorrow morning, sunrise, I'm not gonna kill, I'm not gonna steal, I'm not gonna lie, I'm not gonna dance, I'm not gonna have a sexual sexual contact, no those. In order to do those, we need to have a refuge. The refuge is actually the basic vow, basic foundation. And of course, then if you wanted to take the monk's vow, nun's vow, then you need to have a, you know, refuge vow for sure. But then the next one is bodhisattva vow. A bodhisattva vow, in order to take a bodhisattva vow, you have to have one of those 7 Vinaya vows. Anyone is fine. Can be monk, nun, you know, different levels of the monks, nun are fine, and also lay precepts. There are few different things. You're committing 1 thing, 2 things, 3 things. So the bodhisattva vow, you know, we have taken from who last time? I think we have took Minjirum Bache, yes. So when we take a bodhisattva vow, so what is bodhisattva? Bodhisattva vow, bodhicitta. Jangchup Jisen. I think it's, how do you translate? Altruism, no? Something like that. Altruistic. So in order to generate bodhicitta, there are 2 different, relative bodhicitta and ultimate bodhicitta. An ultimate bodhicitta is something that you achieve when you realize the true nature of phenomena. Meaning when you realize the emptiness, not only intellectually understanding, but you, through experience, when you realize emptiness through experience, you achieve ultimate bodhicitta. And then in order to achieve ultimate bodhicitta, and we have to practice on relative bodhicitta, and the relative bodhicitta have 2 different bodhicitta of inspiration bodhicitta and development bodhicitta. So inspiration bodhicitta means I want to liberate all sentient beings. And then the development or engagement bodhicitta is in order to liberate all sentient beings, I want to practice on 6 perfections and so on. So one is, the first one is more like wishing, you know, and Shanti Deva says in Bodhicharva Avatara, intentional bodhicitta is like wanting to go somewhere, and then engagement bodhicitta is actual going. So there's 2 types of bodhicitta, and then the development bodhicitta, of course, then it includes all those practices, 6 perfections. Not only 6 perfections, starting from taking refuge is starting from the taking refuge, that is based on having motivation of inspiration bodhicitta, it becomes development bodhicitta. So how many of you have the Jewel Ornament of Liberation book? You have it? Because it's good to have the book, you know. If you have the book and then you can follow, it has a really good translation, you know, because I am not going word by word. But then if you can read it, the whole book, you know, and then it will give you, you know, helps you more, way more. Because we cannot just talk everything it written in the book in a few sections. So as I said last time, I'm trying to, you know, bring up all the important part of the teaching. Sure, why not? Yeah, we should close. So then here is some explanation of how you receive the Bodhisattva vow. Bodhisattva vow is something that you can receive from master, and also you can receive, even if you don't have a master, you can receive from, you know, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas images. You can visualize that there is a real Buddha, a real Bodhisattva, and then there are certain prayers that you can recite, you know. If you have a master, and then actual process of receiving Bodhisattva vow, there are different levels. So some are actually a lot of preparation and do in the 3 days, you know. But then short one is we just do in a couple hours. There are some recitations. So usually it requires to go through the 6-7 branch offering prayer when we receive Bodhisattva vow. The reason why is because when you take a Bodhisattva vow, basically you are transforming into Bodhisattva from ordinary being. You know, when you take a Bodhisattva vow, would you become Bodhisattva right away? It depends. Some people can become Bodhisattva right away, but some people cannot. But even if you don't become Bodhisattva, it is a training, you know. Receiving Bodhisattva over and over and over, eventually you become Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva, yeah. For example, when we do Vajrayana practice, we have a different deities, right? We have a white Tara, we have a green Tara, we have a Vajra Yogini, we have a Buddha Shakyamuni. Then we do all this, you know, chakra sambhava and visualization. So when we do these visualizations, basically you become the visualization, you know. People can become the deity Why? Because ultimate level, we are not exist. We are all empty. And then visualization itself is also empty. But we have potential to achieve that visualization, that deity. Okay? So by doing it, by visualization, the idea is we as an ordinary sentient being, and Green Tara is a holy, the most holy deity who has absolutely no faults, no limitation, no obscuration, no negative emotion, but is completely accomplished with the wisdom, abandoned every negativities and achieve all the qualities. And we visualize, and then slowly that deity dissolve into ourselves, and we and deity becomes inseparable. So we are doing over and over and over that. So why? The deity is actually not solidly exist anywhere, not there, nowhere else. But by doing this, because we have the potential to achieve enlightenment, we have a basic Buddha nature that can transform, that can ripen. So then eventually you will realize that you are the Tara, you are the Buddha Shakyamuni, which means you are discovered your true nature, which is there is no difference from Buddha's nature and your nature right from the beginning. But before, we did not realize, we did not discover. By doing this, slowly we will discover, So similar idea, and taking Bodhisattva vows over and over and over, it actually, developed our compassion, developed our wisdom, developed our loving kindness. So in order to receive that, and we do practice on 7 branch offerings. 7 branch offering is, the first one of 7 branch offering is prostration. So we usually come to the temples and to do prostration in front of Buddha's statue or text, the teachings, or Sangha, we do prostration. So why we do this? The one reason is, of course, to paying respect for the enlightened beings by understanding their quality, and by it's cherishing their qualities. On the other hand, we as an ordinary sentient being, we have a lot of ego, Whether you realize or not, we do have our ego, always goes with us. Thinking that I am such and such, I have this and that. Better than, he and she, and so that kind of, we have an ego. It's hard to bow down usually. In order to reduce, the method of reducing our ego is to bowing down. Buddhas and Bodhisattvas usually easy because we have so much devotion towards them that they are enlightened beings. But it is a training that you are accepting somebody else's quality, recognizing their realization, their quality is better than you, so therefore you respect that, and you are reducing your ego. That actually, if we keep on doing this, thinking that way, it will slowly change our personality. If you're arrogant and egoistic person, it helps. Usually it's hard for us to other people's, goodness. We like to show off when we have something, but it's hard to accept when somebody else has something better than you. So that's why the prostration, we do prostration. It's again, when we receive Bodhisattva vow, our plan is we all becoming Bodhisattva. In order to transform into Bodhisattva, you have to have some, purification, accumulation of merit. Basically, other word, making yourself, your life, proper base, proper foundation for Bodhisattva. Because if you just pushed as an ordinary person with full of anger, full of, desire, hatred, attachment, and then the Bodhisattva is absolutely absence of all those anger, hatred, and jealousy. It's like a fire and water. They doesn't go. They're not coexist. So therefore, anger and compassion does not coexist. Bodhisattva. So in order to make ourselves Bodhisattva, and first we have to make our life proper container for the Bodhisattva. So that's why we have to practice on those perfections, that reducing our ego and accepting somebody else's quality, realization. On the other hand, just respect others. We have a lot of trouble to respect others. But this is another advice, how to do it, to prostration, And then there's another one, offering, offering, making offering. Usually we do make offering, flower offering, water offering, tea offering, and we go to temples and, put a lot of flowers. So why we're doing this offering? You think when you put a flower in Buddha's temple, Buddha will be happy? If you don't, he will be upset? No, but nothing to do with the Buddha. Buddha's compassion is like a sun. It's always on us. But whether we will get his compassion, his blessing, it depends on us. If you are inside a room, you won't get the sun, If you go outside, the sunrise is always there. But we as an ordinary sentient being, we have a desire, we have hatred. In order to remove these, we have to make offerings. Like why we have to make an offering if it doesn't make any difference for Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. Like we are so attached to ourselves, we are so attached to anything that belongs to us. This is me, this is mine, We like to collect so many things, even if we don't need things. If you look in your closet, how much clothing you have, maybe many of them you haven't even wore a day, But still you're buying, collecting. It's human nature, we have all this desire. But it's hard to give, Always wanted to take because of our desire. So we make an offering to others, That actually, it is a way to reduce our, attachment to the things that belongs to us. and also attachment to ourselves. Attachment, desire. We have to reduce attachment and desire. So that's why we need to learn to give. So we begin with giving to Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. It's easier because you are, giving holy being. And then slowly we have to give to everybody. We're not, there are some cultures that you always have to learn how to do this, not how to do that, Not taking, but giving. So giving is so important. If you give more, you get more. If you don't give more, you don't get more. So that's another way of, practicing or training to make ourselves better, more concerned about others, more openness, more generous, So then the next one is confession, we do confession. We do 37 practices, 37 Buddha practices. And usually, in a society, everybody have so much trouble to accept your own faults and mistakes. But we always see other people's faults and mistakes, and then we are wanted to bring up and we make it huge. But even if your problem or your fault is huge, you try to minimize as possible in height. And we have a saying that you don't see shit. Shit is like what? Shit is let's say bed bugs. Bed bugs is no good. Use another one. But even if the tiniest, fly walking on your face, you don't. Yeah, no, it's not like that. Even if yak is walking on your face, you won't see it. Okay? I know it's not maybe not funny to you. And then, we have like making molehill what? Mountain out of molehill, Meaning that if somebody else's fault, that even it's tiny, you see as a huge. But your fault mistake is a huge, you don't see as a huge, So that's one of the problem in our society. All the confliction and fighting, war and everything's like that. Even if you look in family, if you have a family argument with a husband and wife, they both think they're right. If somebody thinks, oh, it's my fault, I shouldn't have done that, and I should apologize, then the problem solved. But while you're fighting, you think you're right, and she thinks she's right. So that's why you both cannot be right, or both cannot be wrong. But somebody has a problem of accepting, fault. That happens in everywhere, in our community, our society. So we have to confess, right? We do confess. Means I have done this and that. I'm so sorry, The confession is a method to accept one's own fault and then, apologize. In prayer it says, okay, I am going to confess all the negativities that I have I have done in the past life, this life, and all those that I have done in the future lives, and I'm not going to do any more in the future. It's a good thing to commit. Once you confess and you're promising not to do any more, that can apply like even from the smallest thing to big one. So those are actually not only important for Bodhisattva vow, but it's important for ordinary human being, So that's why the Buddha's teaching, even though he has taught those things 2,500 years ago. Our culture, our, the generation changes, the way of people thinking changes, and everything changes. But some of those teachings never change. They were perfectly suited for the people of 5,100 years ago. It's still suit in 21st century. So the confession is the third one. In the Jisu Yerang is a rejoicing. It's the fourth one. We have, these are also the method of, let's say, prostration is antidote to our ego. Offering is antidote to our attachment. Offering is antidote to our attachment, and confession is our attachment to, and also selfish. The rejoicing is antidote to our jealousy. We have lots of jealous mind in our. If you have, if you're, let's say somebody has something better than you don't like it. So much jealous. In order to have those kind of negative emotions, you don't really have to be a bad person, You can be really good person, but you have lots of jealous, You know that, we all know that. For example, if there's three friends, three very good best friends, okay, and then one of those best friends one day come up with a gift, nice gift for only one of his or her friend and not other one. So if the other person upset, and everybody think, yeah, of course, they three are, best friend. Now this one give only one gift to that person. But other one, no. I understand. You feel bad, upset, nothing wrong. Nobody thinks he's a bad person. It is too, worldly. But then you're jealous, gives so much pain and unhappy in your mind, But if you, instead of you're jealous, upset, crying, maybe even you will commit suicide, you never know. And then you have all kind of things, what I have done. We have been so good friends for so long, but now he's doing all of a sudden, what I have done, maybe that time I said something, maybe that he didn't like, and all those, all kind of trouble comes up. But instead of doing this, wow, if you rejoice, today he did such a wonderful thing to our friend, It did something that even he hasn't done to me. So happy, I'm so happy, rejoice. That'd be great, but no, we cannot have that. So we all have that kind of, mind. It's nothing wrong. I mean, it is wrong ultimately. It's not that we are bad people. You see, the nature of our emotions are like that. So, Buddha said, the rejoicing. It's very important, When you see somebody have something good, you rejoice. And it says, in Mahasukhavati prayer says, if you rejoice somebody's good deed, you will get the same result. If somebody is doing 3 years retreat in the cave, and you're just doing your regular job and keep rejoicing, you will get actually same merit. You don't have to work hard at all, but you're getting 3 years of practice, It's amazing, if you know how to do it. But if you do both doing it, and then at the same time, if you have, jealous thought coming, then all your hard work is wasting. You did so much hard work, but no result. But instead of, if you only rejoicing, you don't have to work at all, but you get so much practice. So that's why the rejoicing, it's really, really important, happy for other people's goodness. If you think about those things, think about our ego, think about our desire, think about our jealousy, and think about our hatred. It's very important to think in our mind over and over, And some people, act like they have to think and do these things only when they're in practice, or only when they're in a shrine. And then when they're out of shrine room or street and their working job, they have no problem of killing ants like this, and and if somebody's doing something in your work, you're just so easy, So basically those practices should slowly change our whole personality from, that's why we always have to have awareness. From the morning till night, you have to watch all your attitude, physically, mentally, verbally, everything that you do. Whenever you do bad thing, you confess, Whenever you see something good about other people, you rejoice. That makes your life so easy, so happy. Instead of just grumpy for no reason. No, grumpy is not the right word.
Yeah. Good word.
So then the next one is request to turn the wheel of Dharma, to Buddha and Bodhisattvas. Because if Buddha doesn't turn the wheel of the Dharma, you cannot practice the Dharma, and therefore you won't achieve enlightenment. And also these can relate to that whoever have a knowledge, and you have to, request to teach, And if you don't do that, if your ego blocks the coming in, then you won't develop at all, If you always think that I am better practitioner than him, I have already spent so many years there and here, or he's just new, I won't learn anything from him. Then you have no opportunity to further develop. You always have to be ready to accept, learn, wherever there is a good thing, Now these people will develop so much. Gampopa said, when you learn, you should learn like a hungry cow eating grass, When the hungry cow comes into grass, it doesn't have a time to, oh, this is more delicious, I want to eat this, and just eat everything, So when you learn, you need to learn everything. Doesn't matter, it's from Kaji, Gelo, Nyingma, wherever, Indian, So the information is always good, Then when it comes to the practice, then it's up to you which one you really wanted to practice and which one you don't. But always having this openness to learn wherever there is a possible, it's always good. So then the next one is requesting, Buddha not to pass into parinirvana, because we wanted to have a Buddha, we wanted to have a teacher that who can teach, we need so that we can learn more. So the next one is dedication. Dedication is very important too. In Buddhism, at the beginning I said 3 excellences. The excellent at the beginning, which was the motivation as a Mahayana practitioner, and you wanted to, do this and that practice for the benefit of all sentient beings. At the end, and also dedication. Whatever, practice you have done, not only keeping for yourself, but I wanted to dedicate to all sentient beings. Again, that makes your practice more profound, more vast. And it says, even if you have done a lots of practice, but if you don't have a dedication, these practices can destroy by certain, these negative emotions. Like when strong anger arises, it will actually destroy all the practice that you have done if you haven't dedicated them. But if you have dedicate the practices, then nobody can destroy it. Also, it increase the value, the power of the practice increases. So that's why the dedication. When we do dedication, we say, okay, I want to dedicate this practice for all sentient beings to achieve happiness. But also, they said that if you don't know how to think about the details, I wanted to dedicate my practice the way all the past Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have done. It's like, the practice is very powerful, but if you don't dedicate, like, for example, if you're very wealthy, if you have so much money, hundreds and thousands of dollars, if you spend it, you can buy so many things and eat and do things. But if you keep in your home, your money will, you spend very fast. And not only that, if some other people knew it, you have lots of cash at home. If these thieves knew it, they will steal it. And then if the big mafias knew you have a big cash, they'll kill you and take the money. So the best thing is put in a bank. If you put in a bank, thief will not steal, mafia will not kill you, you won't spend so much, plus you have interest, Yeah, they have interest, Even if it's 0.1%, but still there is interest, If you have a lot of money, it becomes a lot. It's like this. Undedicated practice it's like having so much cash at home. So therefore you have to remember that it is important to dedicate the practice, whatever you have done. So basically the 7 branch, the prayer that I just mentioned, are the very important practices before we take Bodhisattva vow. You know, so because this is the method to purify our negativities, to increase, to develop, accumulate our merit, you know, accumulate our merit and wisdom. You know, like making offering, doing prostration, rejoicing, and all those accumulate so much merit and purify so much negative emotions. And not only that, it makes, you know, better human being too. Less hatred, less desire, less ego, less jealousy, you know. It's everywhere. The problem is always, for enlightened, obstacle is from negative emotions. So every problem of our society, the only reason that makes us not happy is these negative emotions. So that's why the whole purpose of the practice of Buddhism is to reduce them. We cannot get rid of them right away because we have, you know, collected them past so many lifetimes. It's hard to remove right away. But now that we know how to remove, we're in the right direction, you know. So we should expect to reduce them, you know, increase our compassion, loving kindness, at the same time reduce our negative emotions. If you wanted to see the result of a practice, you know, sometimes because of miscommunication and misinterpretations, a lot of foreigner people think, oh, you great practitioner means you have a special clairvoyance or read some people's mind and you can fly over, you know, sky dome, and they have a funny, you know, ideas sometimes. Oh, I have a very interesting dream. What do you think? You know, I have all the dream. Some great master came and I saw somebody. It could be some of them good, but if you really wanted to see your practice, the result, how much anger you reduce, how much hatred you reduce, how much jealousy you reduce, how much patience you increase, how much compassion you increase, you know. These are the best, you know, expectation that you should have as a Buddhist practitioner, you know. Even if you can read 1,000 people's mind, what can you do? Nothing really much. Well, some magicians can do it, you know, but not practitioners. But when we talk about those, the Milarepa's magic and so on, that's different, right? That's coming out of a realization, you know, realizing emptiness. Okay, so now we can have some questions, discussion.
The Bodhisattva vow, is it so that everybody reaches enlightenment? Is that the vow? Or just for happiness?
Sorry?
The Bodhisattva vow,
Uh-huh.
is it so that everybody can reach enlightenment? Like if we take a vow, or is it just for not suffering and just happiness?
Everybody can reach enlightenment if they have enough diligent to practice, because we all have a Buddha nature. But then taking Bodhisattva vow is also a special method that transforms ourselves into Bodhisattva. But if you don't have any practices, just taking Bodhisattva vow will not achieve enlightenment right away.
Lama Tenzin, I think she's saying we're taking the vow for ourselves or for everybody.
Taking
The Bodhisattva vow just for us
In Mahayana practitioner, there's nothing only for you. Everything is like, when we talk about the refuge, there's two different ways of taking refuge. I am going to take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, achieve enlightenment. Actually, there are three ways, okay? The first one is called Hinayana view, or more like the lesser vehicle view. Means I wanted to take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha to free from suffering myself. And then if you were taking Buddha, Dharma, refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha to free all sentient beings from suffering, that's Mahayana view. Then there are also like at times I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha until end of this life. Or also I take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha until reach enlightenment. And there also you can take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha until all sentient beings reach enlightenment. That's most profound. So same way in Bodhisattva vow, of course. Bodhisattva vow is much more higher level. There's in Bodhisattvas, they have nothing to do with just themselves. Everything is for all sentient beings. Every living being equally.
The Green Tara, is it seen as the mother of all arts? The Green Tara?
Sorry?
The Green Tara, is it kind of like a representation of the mother?
Green Tara is, yes, mother of all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. Her main activity or appearances is to remove obstacles to path of enlightenment. When you practice the Dharma, if the obstacle comes, the practice of a Green Tara would benefit. But it's not that only Green Tara helps. That it's not that Chinrazik doesn't help, Manjushri doesn't help. Although the different Buddhas have a different activities, but they all have the same quality, achieve everything that is, if it's a Buddha, there's nothing that they're not achieved. So means Manjushri, Chinrazik, they all have the ability to remove obstacles on path. But reason why their appearance in the different qualities, different activities, is because different sentient beings have a different expectations, right? So you have a problem with the health, and you have a medicine Buddha. If you have a wealth problem, you have a Dambala. If you have a wisdom problem, you have a Manjushri. But basically, they're all same.
Lama Tenzin,
Yes.
how do we know when we're enlightened?
Don't worry, I will know when you're enlightened.
You'll let me know?
No, you will know it before I do. You let me know when you are enlightened. You will be the first person to know when you're enlightened, okay? You don't have to ask anybody. But don't think you are enlightened if you're not enlightened. Sometimes some people confuse that they think they're enlightened but not.
I've heard people say that if someone says they're enlightened, that's probably a sign that they're not. Is this maybe the case, or?
It could be. Yeah.
Like, you can just tell they shouldn't have to tell you.
Nobody have any questions?
I still had one like about the previous chapter like, about karma and effect. Like the book talks a lot about when you realize the different stages of meditation,
Mm-hmm.
like that you're going to be reborn in one of the God realms. It says so in the book, but then I'm thinking like does that mean that like realizing these different stages of the meditation isn't something acquired? Because if you get reborn in a God realm, afterwards you're going to fall back to a lower state of existence, and then everything is wasted. No?
Well, God realm doesn't really require so much because God realm is still samsara, right? So we have 6 realms, but 3 first one is we call lower, and then 3 later one is upper realm, but all of those are samsara. The God realm, it's a samsara, so therefore it doesn't require so much cause and conditions. But human birth, human life requires more, because human life is the right, proper life foundation for practice, the Dharma, that has the only opportunity to practice, and so that you can have a better lives. But the God realm, due to some cause from previous life, you born in God, but because that is very limited, you fall down again. So understand, the God realm, it's not the God that other religions talk about, like the Christians' God, are different. The God realm is not even a heaven, because heaven doesn't have that suffering, so the suffering of death, the before death suffering.
Maybe it's more like ancient Greek gods, because they live in a god realm, but they're always fighting and having trouble and having
We have like a God realm, and then demigod is another one. They always have to fight with the God, and then they always lose. They have so much jealousy, they have to fight, because God is always better in so many ways. They fight and they always lose it.
So, because it was the same teachings are applicable 2,500 years ago as are today, has there been any progress made? If Dharma has been here for 2,500 years, and people have been practicing for 2,500 years, is there any progress for humans? In like all of the afflictive emotions that we suffer, and or are we going backwards? Sometimes I feel like a robot.
Well, I don't know how to answer that. Because those who practice the Dharma, they achieve their realization, they achieve both sattva, they achieve enlightenment, and then they're reborn in Devachin and so on, right? But doesn't necessarily that the human beings are reborn in human realm again and again, and every time they're born here, they have all those dharma, but no matter how many times they're reborn, always same. It's not like that. So I guess maybe I don't understand what you mean by progress. Did you say progress?
Yeah, like progress in trying to understand like our own conflicts, our own human conflict, and all of the afflictive emotions.
But whoever was here are new to Dharma, right? So whoever was practicing the Dharma in previous lives, they are not here. So out of them, and many of them already enlightened, many of them already, achieve Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. So then in the next 1500 years, we will probably be in Buddhahood, So then there will be more sentient beings here, and they're talking like us. Because samsara has no end, Samsara has no end, and also all these pure ones, every moment, it says in Buddha's, one of the teachings says, every moment countless sentient beings are being enlightened,
So is your question as a human race?
As a human race, yeah.
Oh.
As the human beings on the planet Earth, all of us. If the Dharma's been here for 2,500 years, is it only the people that are exposed to the Dharma that will have the benefit from it?
I think so. Because, the Dharma, the interesting thing is the Buddha said every individual have the responsible for their achievement, their realization, their practice, And you may think that there are hundreds and thousands of enlightened beings. They have so much compassion and power, and they can make the world better. Right? Transform all those human beings, better human beings with more compassion, more wisdom. But I guess that's not the case, because Buddha said, although I am Buddha who achieved enlightenment, abandon every, negativities, but still I cannot pick you up from samsara and drop you in nirvana. The only thing that I can do is I can show you how to go to nirvana, and then at the end it's totally up to you whether you will be here or not, due to your, diligence, your, you have to spend your own time to practice. He said, I cannot clear the negative emotions of sentient beings with my hand. So that's the karma, The karma cannot what's the word? Cannot, like if I buy an air ticket for me and I cannot later change it. Transfer, yeah. Dhamma cannot transfer. So whoever practice, they will get the result. But of course, at the same time, we can pray for other people, Pray for other people's goodness and so on. The prayers have a power, the aspirations. But at the end, I think everything depend on, individuals.
Devachan, is this also in the cycle of samsara? Is this
No, Devachan is nirvana. It's Buddha Amitabha's pure land. Buddha Amitabha is in Devachan. Devachan is Mahasukhavati, right? Basically, Amitabha and Chinrazik, Vajrapani, and they are in Devachan. Devachan is a pure realm that is most easier pure realm that we can, reborn. If we are good practitioners here and easily reborn in Devachan. But a lot of other pure realms are hard to be born there, because Devachin Buddha Amitabhas, his while he was in a path, and he made a special aspiration, so that Devachin is easier to be born. There's no suffering in Devachin, and you don't have to reborn in samsara anymore. But if you're born in Devachin, you can come here, intentionally reborn as a human being, and to teach and to benefit other people. Like we would consider, people like His Holiness Dalai Lama and those, we say it's manifestation, emanations of, Amitabha and Chinrezig. They come to this world because when we talk about the master or teacher, there are a few ways, like Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and then ordinary human being. Until we reach certain level of practitioner like Bodhisattva, we cannot directly see Buddhas. We cannot receive teachings of Buddha, Shakyamuni Buddha, those Nirmanakayas. We have to have a master that can, directly communicate. So therefore, some of those Bodhisattvas reborn as a human life and to benefit human beings.
Do beings generate bodhicitta in Dewa-chan, or what goes on in Dewa-chan once you're reborn there?
In Devachin, everybody is full of compassion, loving kindness. They have no suffering, and then whatever you wishes spontaneously comes. It's like a Devachin. Sounds like Devachin, yeah. Sometimes like we as a Mahayana practitioners, that we don't believe that there's Devachin somewhere, like 50,000 miles from here, existent pure realm, that we can go there. And also like hell and those, not like 50,000 miles down here underneath, so then you can reach to the worst hell and so on. Even though some of the teachings, some of the Hinayana teachings actually said that they have all the numbers, like distant, how far is the worst hell, and then the second worst and third worst and so on. But Mahayana people think it's all perception. Due to our practice, negativity, everything just appears into your mind, but nothing solidly exists that you would get there.
Well, couldn't heaven and hell be actually right here, right now?
Yeah, sure, yeah,
Depending on
definitely, yeah. Because some places when you see in certain like TVs and stuff, it's like hell cannot be worse than that, So hell can have it anywhere, and pure realm can have it here too. If you think everything is, perfect, maybe it's pure realm for you here too. Because, and His Holiness always said that at the end, whether you're happy or not, is not depending on where you are, and not depending on what you have. Of course, the certain things, like if you're physically really sick, or if you have no food, no clothes, then it's totally different. But when we talk about the real the happiness of our mind is outside environment really doesn't do anything. It always depends on how we control, how we take care of our mind, you know. It's all up to us.
So would you say Karmapa is enlightenment?
Well, that's what we believe. We believe that Karmapa is emanation of Chinraze, and he was reborn in this human realm to serve human people for last 17 lifetimes. So, if you have no question, we can do the dedication prayer. Thank you.